Thank you for being here and watching this video. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. I want this channel to be more than just a collection of videos. I want it to be a community where we explore fascinating ideas, discuss them openly, learn from one another, and grow together. So don't stay silent, join the conversation. Positive psychology, consciousness, and the art of genuine inner stillness. Few movements in modern psychology have produced more genuine benefit and more genuine harm simultaneously than positive psychology. And understanding the difference between what it gets right and what it gets catastrophically wrong is one of the more practically useful things a person can do for their own mental and emotional life. It's now reasonably well established across a significant body of research that a person who tends to interpret their experience through a positive lens, who sees difficulty as temporary, problems as solvable, and setbacks as information rather than verdicts, tends to endure hard times with greater calm, greater resilience, and more sustained energy than someone whose default orientation is more negative. This is real. It is not wishful thinking. The psychological and physiological evidence for the benefits of a genuinely optimistic orientation is substantial. But the operative word in that previous sentence is genuinely. The benefits attach to genuine positivity, to the orientation that has been built over time through actual engagement with difficulty and actual development of the inner resources that make authentic optimism possible. They do not attach to performed positivity, to the artificial mask that most people end up wearing after reading the wrong books on the subject, attending the wrong workshops, or absorbing the wrong message from a culture that has turned positive thinking into an industry. And this distinction is not minor. It is the difference between something that helps and something that actively makes things worse. Martin Seligman, who is largely credited with founding positive psychology as a formal field in the late 1990s, was quite clear in his original formulation that what he was studying was authentic flourishing. The genuine, sustainable well-being that comes from building real strengths, finding real meaning, and developing real resilience. He was not advocating for the suppression of negative emotion or the performance of happiness in the absence of its actual conditions. That distortion came later, as the ideas moved from academic psychology into the self-help market, where nuance tends to be simplified and complexity tends to be flattened into the kind of actionable formula that sells books. By the time positive psychology reached the general public, in its most widely consumed forms, it had in many cases become something its founder would not have fully recognized. A prescription for optimism regardless of circumstances, a demand that people feel good and present feeling, good as the primary goal of their inner lives. Imagine carrying genuine darkness inside, real despair, real grief, real pain from real events, while simultaneously forcing a smile on the outside, monitoring your language to ensure it meets some standard of positivity, suppressing the authentic report of your inner experience, because the framework you have absorbed requires you to be positive. A person in this position is not practicing the positive psychology. They are practicing what the psychologist Susan David, in her important work on emotional agility, calls emotional rigidity. The inability to engage honestly with one's own inner experience because a particular emotional outcome has been prescribed in advance. And the research on this is also clear. Emotional suppression does not reduce negative emotion. It amplifies it. The effort of maintaining the performance consumes cognitive and emotional resources. The gap between the performed state and the actual state produces an additional layer of suffering, the suffering of inauthenticity, on top of whatever was already there. The mask becomes not protection, but a burden. In some cases, it becomes something more damaging than that. Because the person who is struggling and who believes that struggling is itself evidence of some failure, of insufficient positivity, of inadequate mindset, of not having done the work that the books prescribed, is now suffering from two sources simultaneously: the original difficulty and the self-judgment that the positivity framework has supplied as the appropriate response to still feeling bad. That second layer of suffering is entirely constructed, entirely unnecessary, and entirely a product of a misapplication of ideas that were, in their original and honest form, pointing towards something genuinely valuable. The misapplication does not merely fail to help. It actively deepens the wound. The psychologist Barbara Held wrote about what she called the tyranny of the positive attitude in American culture. The cultural demand that people present and maintain a cheerful, optimistic exterior, regardless of their actual circumstances, and the shame and self-blame that attaches to anyone who fails to meet this demand. She observed that this demand is not culturally neutral. Trauma is universal. It happens to everyone, in forms that vary enormously in their severity and their source, but that share the common feature of being experiences that exceed the ordinary capacity for processing and integration. The death of someone close, the end of a significant relationship, a failure large enough to reshape one's sense of what is possible, an experience of violence, of betrayal, of humiliation, of profound helplessness. These things leave marks, not because the people they happen to are weak, but because they are human, and the human nervous system is built to register and respond to experiences that matter. The mark is not the problem, the inability to process the mark, to engage with it honestly, to move through it rather than around it, to extract from it whatever understanding it has to offer, is where genuine difficulty begins. In more serious cases, professional support is not just helpful, but genuinely necessary. The idea that all psychological difficulty can be resolved through the right personal practices, the right mindset, the right degree of inner work done in isolation, is one of the more damaging inheritances of the individualism embedded in much self-help culture. Some experiences require external support, the kind that a trained professional can provide. Not because the person is insufficient, but because what they are dealing with exceeds what any individual, regardless of their resources, can reasonably be expected to process alone. Seeking that support is not weakness. It is the intelligent response to an accurate assessment of what the situation actually requires. But in many other cases, the argument with a friend that has left something unresolved, the disappointment that has not yet been fully acknowledged, the fear that is circling without being directly faced. What is required is not professional intervention, but something simpler and more demanding. Genuine honesty with oneself. The willingness to sit with what is actually there, rather than to reach immediately for distraction, for reframing, for the performance of a better emotional state. This is what the art of the quiet mind actually means. Not the absence of thought or feeling, not the achievement of some permanent serenity, but the cultivation of enough inner stillness to hear what is actually present, and to face it without flinching. The contemplative traditions have developed sophisticated technologies for exactly this. Vipassana meditation, in the Buddhist tradition, is not primarily a relaxation technique. It is a practice of attending precisely and honestly to whatever arises in experience, pleasant or unpleasant, comfortable or difficult, without immediately trying to change it, suppress it, or explain it away. The practice trains the capacity to be present with difficult inner states without being overwhelmed by them and without reaching prematurely for relief. What practitioners report consistently is not the elimination of difficult experience, but a changed relationship to it. The development of enough inner space that difficulty can be witnessed without immediately controlling everything. That space is what the quiet mind actually is. The Stoic practice of negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, the deliberate contemplation of what could go wrong or what could be lost, is another form of the same fundamental movement. Rather than avoiding difficult thoughts and uncomfortable feelings, the practice involves turning toward them deliberately and engaging with them honestly, in the controlled context of the contemplative practice, so that when they arrive, unbidden in actual life, they are not experienced as alien or overwhelming, but as something already familiar, already engaged with, already partially integrated. The Stoics were not pessimists. They were people who understood that the refusal to look at difficult realities does not make them less real. It only makes the encounter with them, when it inevitably comes, more destabilizing. The art of silence, in the context of genuine inner difficulty, means something specific and practical. It means pausing before the automatic response, before the performance, before the reframing, before the reaching for the positive spin. It means creating enough stillness to actually hear what is present. What the grief is saying, what the fear is pointing toward, what the anger is reporting about what matters, and what has been violated. It means facing yourself honestly, with the same rigor and the same compassion that you would ideally bring to someone you genuinely cared about who was suffering. And it means finding, from within that honest encounter, a path forward that is grounded in reality rather than in the performance of a state you do not actually inhabit. This is far more effective than pretending to be someone you are not. Not just psychologically more effective, though the evidence for that is substantial. Thank you for watching all the way through. I really appreciate you being here. Let me know what you think about the ideas in this video, and feel free to share your own perspective or advice in the comments. I genuinely like to read it. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please like the video and subscribe. My hope is to build not just a channel, but a community where people explore meaningful ideas, exchange thoughts, and grow together. See you in the next videos. Bye.